Right now, walk into any supermarket on Earth and you will find it sitting in the same place it always sits. Cheap, bright, perfectly curved. It costs less than almost anything else in the entire building. It is so ordinary, so boring, that you don't even think about it. You just grab it, peel it, and forget it existed. But this is the most dangerous fruit in human history. This unremarkable yellow object toppled governments. It built corporate empires more powerful than nations. It funded private armies, corrupted presidents, and left the streets of entire towns soaked in the blood of workers who dared to ask for a day off. It invented a term you still use today without knowing where it came from: Banana Republic. And here is the part that should truly disturb you. The banana you are about to eat is not a fruit in the way you think. It is a clone, a genetic copy of a copy of a copy, stretching back generations, completely identical, completely sterile, and completely doomed. You are eating a walking corpse, and it has died before. This is the story of the banana. To understand how a fruit conquered the tropics and enslaved the politics of an entire hemisphere, we have to go back more than 7,000 years to the humid jungles of Southeast Asia and the island of New Guinea. The original banana was a monster. If you found a wild banana today, you would not recognize it. It was short, stubby, and packed so full of hard black seeds that there was almost no flesh to eat at all. Biting into one was like biting into a bag of gravel. The seeds could crack your teeth. It was, by every measure, a terrible thing to eat. But ancient humans noticed something extraordinary. Every so often, a rare mutant plant would appear, a plant whose fruit had no seeds, a soft, sweet, edible pulp with nothing hard inside. In nature, this was a death sentence for the plant. A banana with no seeds cannot reproduce. It is sterile. It should have vanished immediately. Instead, humans saved it. Early farmers discovered that they didn't need the seeds at all. They could slice off a piece of the plant, replant it, and grow an exact copy, a clone. And so, for thousands of years, humanity kept these sterile mutants alive by hand, planting cutting after cutting, generation after generation. Every domesticated banana on the planet today is the descendant of those first lucky mutations, kept breathing only because we refused to let them die. The banana could not survive without us, and soon we would build empires that could not survive without it. As trade routes opened, the fruit began its slow march across the ancient world. Austronesian sailors carried it across the Indian Ocean. Arab traders brought it west, and it is from their word for the fingers of the hand, banan, that we get its modern name, because a bunch of them looks like a cluster of fingers. Everywhere it went, it became sacred. In India, it was woven into religious ceremony and offered to the gods. Ancient texts called it the food of the wise. When Alexander the Great's armies pushed into the Indus Valley in 327 BC, Greek soldiers recorded seeing philosophers resting in the shade of its broad leaves, eating its fruit. In some traditions, this, not the apple, was the true forbidden fruit of paradise, which is why botanists would later name one variety Musa paradisiaca, the fruit of paradise. For most of human history, the banana was a gentle thing, a blessing, a miracle of the tropics. But in 1492, when Europe collided with the New World, everything began to change. Portuguese traders carried the banana from West Africa to the Canary Islands, and from there across the Atlantic to the Caribbean and Central America. The plant found paradise. The hot, wet, volcanic soil of the tropics was perfect. Bananas exploded across the region, growing faster and more abundantly than almost anywhere on Earth. And for centuries, that is all it was, a local food. Because there was one impossible problem. The banana is fragile. It bruises, it rots, it ripens fast and dies faster. In a world of wooden sailing ships and slow ports, a banana picked in Honduras would be a rotten black mess long before it ever reached New York or London. The banana was trapped in the tropics. Until the machines came. In the late 1800s, two inventions changed the fate of the fruit forever: the steamship and the railroad. Suddenly, cargo could move fast enough perhaps to outrun the rot. And a small group of American businessmen realized something that would reshape the world. If you could get a green banana from a Central American jungle to an American breakfast table before it spoiled, you would not just be selling fruit, you would be printing money. One of these men was named Miner Keith. He had gone to Costa Rica to build a railroad, a brutal project that killed thousands of workers, including his own brothers, in the disease-ridden jungle. To make the failing railroad profitable, he planted bananas along the tracks and began shipping them north. The fruit sold explosively. Keith soon realized the bananas were worth far more than the railroad ever would be. In 1899, Keith merged his operation with a rival, and together they created a corporation that would become one of the most feared and powerful entities in the history of the Western Hemisphere, the United Fruit Company. They did not simply grow bananas, they swallowed nations whole. United Fruit bought up staggering quantities of land across Guatemala, Honduras, Costa Rica, and Colombia, often far more than they ever farmed, hoarding it just to keep competitors out. They owned the railroads, they owned the ports, they owned the telegraph lines and the shipping fleets, the famous Great White Fleet. In many of these countries, the company controlled the only path in and the only path out. It printed its own money in company towns. It paid workers in credit that could only be spent in company stores. Across Central America, people gave the company a single, chilling nickname: El Pulpo, the Octopus, because its tentacles reached into everything: the economy, the land, the courts, and the government itself. When a president cooperated, the company made him rich. When a president resisted, the company simply arranged for a new one. It was an American writer, O. Henry, hiding in Honduras in 1904 to escape embezzlement charges, who watched a nation run entirely for the profit of a fruit company, and coined a phrase to describe it. He called it a banana republic, a country that was, in every way that mattered, a plantation with a flag. And like any empire, when its power was threatened, the octopus did not hesitate to spill blood. In 1928, in the town of Ciénaga, Colombia, the workers of United Fruit had finally had enough. They laboured in brutal conditions, 6 days a week, paid in company scrip, with no proper sanitation and no medical care. They went on strike, asking for the simplest human dignities: written contracts, rest on Sundays, to be paid in actual money. The company called them agitators, communists, a threat. Under pressure from United Fruit, and terrified that the United States might invade to protect the company's interests, the Colombian government sent in the army. On the night of December 6th, thousands of workers and their families gathered peacefully in the town square. Soldiers surrounded them, mounted machine guns on the rooftops, and opened fire into the crowd. We still do not know how many died. Estimates range from dozens to as many as 2,000 bodies, some say carried away in the night and dumped into the sea. The event was so haunting that decades later the writer Gabriel Garcia Marquez immortalized it in 100 Years of Solitude, describing a massacre the official history tried to erase as if it had never happened at all. But the darkest chapter of the banana was still to come, and this time it would not just topple a town, it would topple a democracy. The country was Guatemala. For decades, United Fruit had ruled it like a private kingdom, holding vast tracts of unused land and paying almost no taxes. Then, in 1950, the Guatemalan people elected a reformer named Jacobo Arbenz. Arbenz had a simple, dangerous idea. The enormous stretches of farmland the company was hoarding and not using should be redistributed to landless peasants, and the company would be compensated at the exact, laughably low value the company itself had declared for tax purposes. The United Fruit Company declared war. But they did not use soldiers this time. They used something far more powerful: propaganda. The company hired a man named Edward Bernays, the so-called father of public relations, the master of manipulating the American mind. Bernays launched a masterful, coordinated campaign to convince the American public and the American government that Guatemala had become a Soviet beachhead, that Arbenz was a communist puppet, that a red menace was taking root just miles from American soil. It was almost entirely fiction, but it worked perfectly. In 1954, the CIA launched Operation PBSuccess. Armed rebels, trained and funded by the United States, crossed into Guatemala, backed by American planes and a relentless radio propaganda campaign designed to make the government believe an unstoppable invasion was coming. Arbenz, the democratically elected leader of a sovereign nation, was forced to resign. What followed was catastrophe. Guatemala collapsed into a series of brutal military dictatorships and a civil war that would rage for nearly 4 decades, killing an estimated 200,000 people. All of it, at least in part, so that a fruit company would not have to give up land it was not even using. The banana had overthrown a democracy. And yet, while the octopus was busy conquering nations, an invisible enemy was quietly preparing to destroy the empire from within. Here is what you have to understand. The banana that built United Fruit's empire was not the banana you eat today. It was a variety called the Gros Michel. Bigger, sweeter, creamier, with a thicker skin perfect for shipping. People who tasted it said it made today's bananas seem bland and watery by comparison. It was, by all accounts, a superior fruit. But remember the banana's fatal secret. Every Gros Michel was a clone, a genetically identical copy of every other Gros Michel on the planet. And a field of identical plants has no defences. If a disease can kill one, it can kill all of them. That disease came. It was a soil fungus called Panama disease, and it attacked the roots of the Gros Michel, choking the plants to death from below. Because every plant was identical, the fungus tore through the plantations like fire through dry grass. It spread across Central America, jumping from farm to farm, and there was no cure. By the 1960s, the mighty Gros Michel, the fruit that funded coups and massacres, was commercially extinct, wiped from the earth. The empire was facing total collapse. And so it made a desperate gamble. It found a replacement, a different clone, one that happened to resist the fungus. It was smaller, blander, more fragile, but it survived. It was called the Cavendish. That is the banana in your hand right now. And it is the same trap all over again. Every Cavendish banana on the planet is, once more, a single sterile clone, genetically identical. grown in vast monocultures with no natural defence against a plague. For decades this worked, but nature is patient, and a new strain of the fungus has now evolved.